Well, hello everybody. We are here at the One Stud at a Time podcast. I am your host, Adrian Avila, with, as you guys can tell, Avila Construction and Anubis Tranquillum. But with me today, I have the honor of bringing Grace Sanchez from the McKinley Center to be one of our speakers today. And, it's definitely an honor and a pleasure to have her. A little bit about Grace, and I'll use my cheat sheet that I have here. And Grace Sanchez is a dynamic public speaker, published author, entrepreneur, and fundraiser dedicated to making a difference in the world. Born of immigrant parents and raised in Compton, California, just a few freeways down, Grace embodies the resilience, determination, and the power of giving back. Her journey from humble beginnings to success is an inspiring testament to the transformative power of education, hard work, and compassion. So, Grace, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be with you. I'm humbled.
I am humbled and honored to have you here. If people only knew, right? And this is what it's all about. It's, bringing up the grit that we come through in life to where we are today.
So true.
Right? And we're trying to give people that, that feeling of, there is hope at the end of the tunnel. There is light at the end of the tunnel, right?
So true.
And a lot of us as entrepreneurs can be in that darkness and, they're like, oh, I'm the only one going through this, but it's definitely something that, we're doing this to bring the awareness of the entrepreneurship. And, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
So true.
Right?
So true.
And so, Grace, I just give us a little bit more background about who you are, what you're doing here at McKinley, and, let's see where we go from here.
Sounds good. Well, I would like to start by sharing that I am an overcomer. I think that's how I would describe myself. I have probably, I would say my secret power is adversity. I definitely have had plenty of it in my life, but it has fueled me, to overcome and to be better and to use that pain and that whatever challenge for my good. And so, I am a fundraiser by professional, career. My entire career, I've been a fundraiser. I started with Focus on the Family. I spent 7 years working with Dr. Dobson. I was the first woman to be in the development team. I then went to World Vision and spent 7 years there. I've always viewed myself as a broker of hope, working with very wealthy individuals and sharing with them the need that exists, and then marrying those two. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am really just an advocate for living a purpose-filled life.
That is beautiful, with an intensive resume there. And this is why I tell you it's such an honor to sit here with you today, Grace, and go over, just a couple of things. But before we get into the nitty-gritty stuff,
Sure.
Let's give people a little bit of a more personal thing. Like, what are your favorite hobbies to do on your spare times?
I love to travel the world. I am an adventurer at heart. I some people get freaked out about airplanes or flying. I think I thrive on it. So I love to travel and to see the world. Cooking, if I can cook for someone and allow my creative, gifts to flow, I love to cook. And then lastly, I would say golf. I'm becoming an avid golfer these days.
Nice.
And so whenever I have some free time, I'll be on the golf course.
Very nice, very nice. Any books you're reading right now?
Oh man, I am reading an incredible book by 50 Cent, and it's called Hustle Harder. And it's funny, maybe coming from Compton or whatever, but he's the one reading the book, so I'm doing audibles.
Gotcha.
Because I'm on a plane, I set a goal to read 5 books a month.
Right.
So I
Wow.
got to do it by either walking or working out and listening. So
There you go.
I love it. I highly recommend that book.
That is awesome. I'm like, to hear you say that you're reading a book from 50 Cent, it's like, like your name says it all. You walk with grace, and then you hear you're listening to 50 Cent's book,
Oh.
right? It's like
He's amazing. It's such a great book.
he is. He's a great entrepreneur himself,
Yes.
and just what he does in general with his foundations that he does.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. Is there any like morning routine that you do, or an evening routine that you do religiously? Like, as in like, for me, my first thing in the morning is I get up and jump into a cold plunge. So that's like that's my thing, and that's my sense of like meditation, where I sit in there and I just, for the 5 minutes, I'm just in there meditating in prayer, or just trying to like release any stress from my body. So that's why I ask people, like, what is your like morning routine or your evening routine?
Dude, how can I like top that? That is amazing. I want to be like you when I grow up. I would say for me, my kind of ritual is definitely I start the morning with obviously some prayer, some gratitude. I try to put in 4 to 6 miles a day. So I'll do like some speed walking or a little light jog, but I live in Claremont, so I go all the way up to baseline and just kind of have a little routine. That's where I listen to my books, and sometimes it just is talking to Papa and just bringing the challenges that I'm facing and just asking for wisdom and direction. So that's kind of
awesome.
my quiet. And then I'll come back and do a little journal.
Gotcha.
I always say it's like my data that I feel like maybe I got some insight or something that might have come from during the time on the walk. And then I'll just come back and spend a little time and journal. That's my coffee time. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, it's
That's
good.
awesome. All right. Well, we all have our morning, our evening routines. We all have, our ways we, release our stress, or we are thinking, right? And so, I mean, honestly, I picked up the book last week, and I read it, right?
Thank
And it's just reading through it and going through the personal growth and the self-discovery. For anybody listening, it's called Finding Gracie, the 40 Days of Personal Growth and Self-Discovery. Highly recommend the book to read. It is definitely, I sped read it, so I read the whole thing, but it's to be done in 40 days and actually reflect on each part of that book. And just reading it, the background you give of the family, of the your personal and business life, is how it's all in here. I tell you, we spoke earlier and how it resonates with me so much. And for the people who know who I am and know my story, and they actually read this one, they'll be like, oh, okay,
That makes
there's
sense.
connections there. And I tell you, that's why I felt that, when I met you, like there was such a connection there, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I read this book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why. And for some reason, the universe brings us together to sit here today, right, in this beautiful city of San Dimas, right? And it's just amazing. And so, let me just go through one of them. And it was here it is actually, The Power of Hope, right? Where you go through it, and you're talking about, how people have the struggles on a day-to-day basis, right? And you even said here, lately I've been doing a lot of writing and revisiting about the pretty rough time in my life, right? We all go through these rough times in our life where we say that, hey, this is my biggest failure of life, right? But, I came to realize that, failure is such a negative word that we use. So I started saying, what is the lesson of this incident? And so to my question to you today is, what was your biggest lesson? And what did you learn from that experience?
I would say the title of the book is called Finding Gracie, because I feel like as a result of painful experiences, obviously I was a victim of sexual abuse as a child, which led to, becoming an overachiever, kind of I remember that day. I wrote about it in one of the chapters where, um, I was in school. I was 10 years old, and um, going to school feeling like everybody knew what had happened to me
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, type thing, and feeling overwhelming shame and kind of that scarlet letter that everyone on campus could kind of see. And again, fourth grade, 10 years old, way too much for
Right.
a little girl to have to navigate. But I remember being in that bathroom, locked myself in during recess, and I came up with like this strategy, at 10 years old. And I said to myself, if you act perfect, no one will ever know. And that began this life of, a facade in a way. I often say that as an adult, I lived behind a plexiglass. You could see me, but you couldn't touch me. You couldn't get close. You couldn't, I had become so protective of that little girl that was hiding that, I just, it just became a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, a breaking situation. I refer to it in the book as my earthquake. It's what shook me so hard. I joke and say that it was an earthquake followed by a tsunami because
Mm-hmm.
it felt like everything just came crashing down. Um, but it was what it took for me to find Gracie, because part of me felt like for those years I had buried her. I had
Mm-hmm.
put her in a closet. I had put her away because she represented, kind of a flaw, like a broken part. And I think I wrote about it like I didn't want my parents to have damaged goods for
Mm-hmm.
a daughter. I wanted them to have a successful daughter. And so, you know, that became the beginning of straight A's, overachiever, valedictorian. I mean, I just wanted so much to acquire those things so that no one would have to see,
Mm-hmm.
what I had been through. So I think the lesson is, you know, obviously I've concluded that that strategy was self-preservation. That was going to be my survival.
Right.
We know that statistics show that, young girls who are victims of sexual abuse either are, become very promiscuous, go into drugs. Many of them, become prostitutes. There's so many other paths that unfortunately come as a result of those types of wounds. I'm grateful that, mine was okay, I'm going to become a great straight A student. But at the same time, I became somewhat addicted to affirmation and needing that pat on the back or that, yes, you've got, atta girl type
Yeah.
things, which, became a life of bondage because I was always having to perform. I was always having to strive. I just couldn't be me and allow people to love me for who I was. And I realized that I carried that in other areas of my life.
Right. And it's crazy that, you know, I recently learned a few years ago, it's like our past travels with us if we don't address it.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I go in and, there's moments where I've had my breaking points. And it's, we ask ourselves, how did we find the belief in ourselves
Mm.
to get out of it? Right. And I know you talked, you were in the bathroom when you had this, but what is it? What is that? How'd you find that belief again
Wow.
of little Gracie, right? That came out.
I will tell you, Adrian, I went through a very painful divorce, the one that I referred to as my earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
And I came close to losing everything. I mean, I had a beautiful home in Claremont, and I still live in Claremont, thank God. But I had this beautiful kind of a showcase house,
Mm-hmm.
and on top of the mantle was this beautiful painting, portrait, that we probably spent way too much money on, but it was this entrance to my home, and you would see this beautiful portrait, and it was of my family. And um, that had to be taken down, when I was going through that divorce, and I moved out of that house, and I kind of lost a lot of my identity, of that perfection, of that, you know, kind of that image. I think that's what it really was. It was that falling of that image. And I went to go live in Lake Arrowhead at we had a vacation home. And it was my life on the mountain where I felt like God was rebuilding me. Like He was, you know, reassuring me that, listen, you're going to be okay. You're not only going to be okay, you're going to be better.
Right.
And it was hard to understand that, because all I wanted was that life that I had, like that, and I often use the analogy of, like, imagine my sweater unraveling, like, and you pull it and then it's like, it's moving so fast, it's unraveling.
Correct.
I was trying to stop the unraveling of my life because, I liked the sweater and I liked the way that it was, the image of it, but it had to unravel in order for me to get to Gracie. And so that season in the mountain where I was alone, I was having to face truth, that I had hid for so long. So I was having to discover, I took the time to say, who am I? Like, who am I outside of that marriage? Who am I outside of that relationship? Who am I? Who do I want to be? Like, that was how basic I had to go back to. So I remember I went to this incredible, really, really, it was an amazing program that I went through. It was 4 days of very intensive, it was like therapy for 2 years over 3 days. I mean, that's how serious this thing was. I mean, it was intense. We could talk about that at another time. But it was in that thing that they called breakthroughs. And that's
Correct.
the name of it. And I really was faced with a crossroad of, like, okay, that's who you were. Who are you going to be moving forward? Like, what is that going to be? And that began that process. And I knew this. I wanted to be honest. I wanted to be simple. And I wanted to be a person of my word. And those three things became kind of the guiding points. Every decision, everything that I made had to line up with these three things, to the point where I'd be writing an email to someone. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to see you. Wait a minute. Am I really? Delete, delete, delete. I look for, I had to change it because I wasn't being honest in the other one. I was, adding, and then I had to constantly check in with myself. And so those have been the things. And I think that as I gained confidence in myself and, spending time with little girl Gracie, who I'd hidden for so long, that's, I think, where I got the beliefs to overcome and to grow in the midst of so much pain.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, and I talk about this again with you. It's like there's, I resonate with you a lot without even knowing why until I read this book, right?
Wow.
And so a little bit about what I went through, and this is like a
Please.
few years ago. A few years ago, my previous relationship was diminished because of my own past that I would never address.
Okay.
And it would come into play all the time, right? And I never realized it until I lost that person, right? It was a family, really. And you say until you lose it all and you start getting the sweater unraveled, and to me it was like I felt like I was naked, I was bare, and I was exposed, and everything was just coming at me, just like boom, boom, boom. And I too went to this whole thing with a breakthrough, right? And this is the first time I hear about this breakthrough.
Wow.
But the moment you do these breakthroughs, it felt like the weight was off my shoulders,
Whew, so
right?
true.
But I feel like, that relationships was a blessing for it to have ended.
Oh,
That I have a lot of love for that family no matter what.
of course.
But it had to end to break that glass that I was just bumping into all the time, right?
Absolutely.
And so, I even told him to this day, I'm like, you know what? It was a blessing, because I found who I was again. I was able to rebuild who I was in the past. And now I was able to leave that past, find the blessings, from that, from those events, and be like, you know what? This is who it was able to make today. Right?
Absolutely.
And so I feel like, we go through these, sorry, a little bit of vulnerability here, right? And it's just, it just felt liberating at that point. And, and I hear some of these stories from, some of these kids here at McKinley of what they go through.
Oh,
And,
my gosh, yes.
and it's just like, it tugs at your heart so much. And it's just like, man, okay, you had it bad, Adrian, but you know what? Like, compared to what some of these kids have gone through, like, man, you had a walk in the park, right? And it's, it took me a while to accept, what happened in my past, and to be like, you know what? Like, my past does not define who I am today.
Absolutely.
It only made me a better person today. And that's all I ever say.
I love
Right,
that.
is that it's helped me become the person I am today, and to be able to, sit with these kids sometimes and just hear their story. That's all they want, right?
Absolutely.
But as little Adrian, it's like it was the shame, the guilt, everything behind it.
Condemnation. So many of those.
So many things, right? And like you said, and again, I feel like we're like, we're each other's mirror in a way, because it's like, again, Adrian had to show perfection in all he did. Adrian couldn't be wrong. Until this day, people will tell you, Adrian, you will argue with people until you turn blue if you know something's truthful. But you won't let the other person walk away with it because you know the truth behind it. And I'm like, it's one of my things I work with on a daily basis, but it made me who I am today.
Right.
And I'm blessed to have gone through events and have been able to overcome them and find the blessings behind it.
Absolutely.
And so, you go back to talking about little Gracie. It's like, if you were able, well, McKinley has kids from newborn, right, to 18, or I forgot the
We usually start about 9.
9.
Yeah.
So, 9 to the 18 realm, right? So, like, I would say, like, the McKinley kids here, what would you tell a 14, like, say the 10-year-old McKinley kid, if you were able to tell them what they're going through? And I know you probably have talked to them, but what is it that you tell them to give them that inspiration to, if you were able to tell your own 10-year-old self again something that you know today?
Oh my gosh. I would say I would probably tell what our children here at McKinley that they do have the power to be whoever they desire to be, and to acquire and achieve whatever their dreams are. Because I think that, as I look back on my life and my little 10-year-old Gracie, obviously, working hard, having determination, I do feel like that came as a result of, like, similar to what you were sharing, when you've got that pain, you've got to channel that somewhere. So becoming an overachiever and becoming a hard worker, I never let go of dreams. I felt like even when I lost everything and, I felt like I was just this puddle of mush, pretty much. And I had to pick myself up from that and rebuild. Truly, which I do want to pause for a moment and tell you that I used the word earthquake earlier, and I learned that in Chinese, the word earthquake means to rebuild. And I always think of that like, yes, this earthquake I had experienced, but it was because there was going to be a rebuilding of myself. So I want to say to our youth here at McKinley that there's a way to experience success despite what you have experienced. And I think sometimes what keeps me so motivated about McKinley is that, maybe what I'm going to say is going to sound a little off, but just go with me for a moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of programs out there where, there's rehabs and things, but, a lot of those folks have made choices, right, that have gotten them those consequences, right? Either they've chosen drugs or alcohol or some level of addiction. The youth that we have here at McKinley, they're not here because of their choices. They're here because someone else
Yeah.
made choices that led for them to be here.
Correct.
So I feel like, you know, they don't have the people that were supposed to protect them, the people who were supposed to provide for them, failed them pretty much.
Yeah.
And maybe that sounds too harsh, but it's the reality. They're here because they don't have their parents or their family,
Yeah.
right? So my message to them is regardless, allow that pain to be what fuels you
Yeah.
to be successful, because we can overcome anything. And I really do believe that. I feel like, I came from a home with a mom and dad, and, they were immigrants. They worked hard. They taught us the basics of, how we had to persevere
Yeah.
to be able to be successful. So my hope is that the youth here at McKinley, and I would say to little girl Gracie, that, regardless of where the pain and things that, were done to me that were wrong, that somehow that could be good, that God could use that for good. And I feel like that's part of what drives me to be here at McKinley. It's what wakes me up with passion to come to work.
That's beautiful, Grace. Very beautiful. I know you mentioned earlier, like when you have lost it all, right? And people sometimes say, "Oh, like I went broke," but to me, like in my journey, broke wasn't the monetary factory. It was like I was broke inside. I was broken down mentally, spiritually. Like you name it. Like I was broken down, right? Like, what was your moment of being broke?
I've been pondering and thinking, I think that when I was up at my season in Lake Arrowhead, you know, um, I don't know if this will make sense, but let's see if it'll resonate. There's that story, biblical story about Jesus will leave the 99 sheep to go search for the one that has gone astray or has gone to the side. The theory is that as the shepherd breaks the front two legs of the little lamb, as a part of a learning, but also the lesson is that the shepherd carries that lamb in that experience, and it is a breaking. And I feel like, not to say that I was being punished, because I didn't feel that, but I think that when we're broken, it's when God, whatever you want to call your higher power, for me, it's God, but it's a season where He carries us. And it's in that carrying that we experience true healing and true restoration. And I felt like that season was my breaking, and that He wanted to carry me. And it was in that carrying season that I really grew, and I really, got to build the blocks to who I am today.
Yeah, it and it's crazy because like for me, when I told you like when I broke down finally, it was like everything had hit me at one point, right? And it was now up to Adrian to rebuild upon it. Right. And I mean, I own a construction company. So for me, it's like I build and I break things and I rebuild them. Right. And so I would always go back to him like, you know what? Without a strong foundation again, I can't rebuild upon myself.
That's right.
And so that's where like I started doing a lot of like the breakthrough work, channeling those negative emotions and finding out what those negative emotions were and bringing light to them, right? And so I just feel that when we have the opportunity that's how I'm going to put it, is when we have the opportunity to be alone, right? And to actually sit with all that's hitting you, that's what gives you that foundation again.
Absolutely.
And so people would laugh at me because they'd be like, oh, you're going to go have dinner by yourself. And I'm like, yeah. I go, you have to be able to have dinner with yourself.
Absolutely.
Sit at the table by yourself and have dinner. I go, because that is your own moment. To this day, I'll go have lunch by myself and like just, sit at a table and people are like, you're having lunch by yourself? And I said, it just shows you how unsecure you are about who you are.
And you learn to enjoy your own presence. I don't know if you've gotten to the chapter of the book where I talk about a 500-mile pilgrimage.
Yes, the Camino de Santiago.
By myself, 30 days.
Yes. How was that?
Oh my gosh, hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Truly, truly. Day 3, I thought, I'm coming home. I wanted to pack up and say, this is insane. What have I done? But that was also one of those life-changing experiences that I think, it really tests you as to who you are and what you're made of.
Yeah.
So I finished and I got to be at the Camino at the, sanctuary and the church, and it was amazing.
Well, during those 30 days, I mean, I have to ask, like, what did you learn from it? What did it teach you? What was, discovered from those 30 days? Because again, you did this alone. So again, there's a lot of self-reflection going on during this time.
Absolutely. Right. I think it's important to share that on the days that I walked 21 miles a day, which a marathon's 26.
Right.
And you're doing hills, mountains, rough terrain. When I rode my bike, which I rode for about 7 to 10 days, I ended up with 10 days on the bike, you're riding 50 miles a day. So you're just, in this cycle. I would say I went to the Camino with 3 questions. I got them all answered because, your day is really, I didn't have any phone. I went off the grid.
Yeah.
My oldest son at the time was working with me at my company. And what we did, we had to come in with an agreement. And I said, look, the hotels, I did book hotels. I wasn't in hostels. I said, if the hotel reaches out to you, it means that I didn't check in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you'll know if something happened to me.
Right.
But we didn't communicate. So no phone, no technology, no ability to, watch a movie or anything. I think it taught me the power of solitude, the ability to be with your own thoughts. Obviously, a lot of journaling, but it was a cleansing time. It was a time of me, to really spend with reflection and inward, introspection, looking at who I am and who do I desire to be. It tested every aspect of my senses. I mean, riding a bike where there's a 3,000-foot drop to the right, that if you, lose your balance a little bit, it could be fatal.
Right.
Left my children, left my grandson, left, my business, my employees, It was a big risk, but I felt like it really taught me so much of what I'm capable of.
Amazing. I mean, I love it because it's, again, you're in solitude. You're finding even, deeper of who Grace or Gracie is, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, one small mistake, and
So
you're off the cliff, right? I mean, it's. I mean, what would you tell somebody who's been contemplating to do the
do
to do it?
it. Do it. It's life changing. It is truly life changing. I think I look back, there's days that I think that's part of, I do have a Peloton, so I
Mhm.
ride. That's part of my way. I think when I'm feeling stressed, it's like I'm getting on the bike. And when I finish seeing the sweat on the ground, I'm like, okay, I left it on the bike. So I think that, you know, there's something about to be able to step away. I think we live now in a society where I went somewhere the other day and literally a man said to me, wow, you're like the first person that I haven't seen on their phone. Everybody's always scrolling on their phone. I'm like, I fight that. Like, I'm
Right?
trying not to be on my phone.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, like you said, we're a society that can't be disconnected.
Right.
Everybody feels like, you know, I got to take a selfie or I got to do this. So it was a test
Yeah.
of, you know, what you can do, and it was very freeing. So I would highly recommend. I think that, you know, it's hard for anybody to take off 30 days, but you could do the Camino for 1 week.
Hmm.
Just you could do a Camino yourself. You could find a trail and
Yeah.
leave your phone or just turn it off, or, you know, just find that ability to reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your higher power, reconnect with quieting your mind. And I think that's where real healing comes from.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. So as Grace says, you know, find your own path, right? Find your camino to actually, take some time to yourself and enjoy who you are as a person. Reflect on where you came from and how you've gone to this moment in your life to actually give praise to that no matter what, right?
Indeed.
And I feel that this is like this it's your own gift to yourself at that point,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And so, really quick, Grace, so McKinley, can we just touch on it a little bit?
Sure.
What is it about McKinley that people should know about? I mean, I would say give us like the quick notes version of
You got it.
McKinley, and just what is it that our viewers, our listeners, can take away of what McKinley is and what we're looking for.
Absolutely. McKinley started as an orphanage back in the 1900s,
Mm-hmm.
and over the years has become really a beacon of light in many, many ways. We have a home still here in San Dimas for youth that are unable to be in foster care. So we have youth here that live on campus. We have 2 non-public schools, one in the high desert, one here in San Dimas. We have a foster family and adoption program that is where we have 100 families that are resource parents to 100 youth.
Wow.
People can adopt through McKinley, either foster children that they're fostering or become adoptive parents through McKinley as well. We have a mental health program that, oh my gosh, we've got 4 locations all around Southern California. We also are new to something called the Unaccompanied Children's Program. This is from the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Lots of children from the borders who have been being tried to be reconnected with family or loved ones. We currently, I believe, have like 42 here on campus. And then now we've just become a nationwide program where we are actually taking these youth to their families and reconnecting with them, and then staying with them, following up with them, making sure that they, if they have a desire to go to college or a desire to, grow in various ways, we now have that capacity to follow that youth
That's awesome.
through that transition.
That's
So
awesome.
it's amazing. I would say to anyone listening, if you have a desire to either volunteer or to get involved, just to come and to learn about McKinley, There are lots of ways that you could give of your time. If you just happen to have some money sitting around, you're like, what am I going to do with this money? Come on over to McKinley. We do have some amazing programs. Soccer, music room, gardening, lots of things that we could definitely use resources for. I would like to leave our audience with this, Adrian, and this is, as we've been talking about being introspective, I would ask, when that day comes that we all are going to be eulogized, right? Someone's going to speak at our funeral about us. And, what is it that you want to be remembered for? What do you want people to speak about you at your funeral? What do you want people to say? What kind of person you were? What kind of human you were on this earth? Being compassionate, being generous, being kind, being a person who cares about others. You don't have to travel to Africa or go to a third world country. Come to McKinley, give some time. You got a couple hours on Saturday, plant some flowers with our youth. Help, a little thing can go so far here at McKinley. So I would love to challenge you and say, be that person who gives of your time, your talent, or your treasure for somewhere that is local, a place that you could come and you could see the impact that you're giving.
Right. And again, it's local here in Southern California. And I mean, the reason behind all of this too is if we can just change and make an impact on one student here, we don't know what that one student is capable of finding a cure for something, being the next Elon Musk or, just something like that, right? What happens if that one kid is here?
Yeah.
And he just has to have the right direction from somebody, someone who gives them the time, attention. So I ask everybody who's listening in or watching, just, if you have either the time, the talent, or the treasure, give McKinley a look. I mean, there's so much that could be done here. And this is just the beginning, like I said, Grace, of what we're trying to do here.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I don't even know what to say. I'm speechless with our conversation. It's just, it kind of hits home to me, and I know many of my people who are going to be listening to this. It's just, it resonates with all of us.
It's been an honor.
No, thank you, Grace.
Thank you
again.
so much.
And again, everybody, Grace Sanchez, and it's a great organization here at the McKinley Center. So please, if you guys have time, just reach out to me, reach out to Grace. All our information will be on the description, so you guys can look at it. Again, this is Adrian Avila with the One Step at a Time podcast. We thank you for tuning in, and hopefully today's message was received by the right people who needed to hear it today. Again, this is us checking out. Grace and Adrian. Peace.
Thanks. Bye, guys.